let me break it out into two categories of evidence. The first would be raw statistical information. As you may know, my background, I have a doctorate degree in the behavioral sciences, and I've spent a lot of time in the field of statistics and regression. And I think there's, I've testified as an expert for over 20 years in those fields of statistics and research and data. So I feel I can speak to that with some degree of credibility. So that's one area I'd like to talk about. The other area is when I took a research trip up to Canada and the Hilda bone beds where the dinosaurs are buried, where you can look out over 14 miles and see dinosaurs buried with fish and mammals. There's an incredible degree of evidence that those creatures were buried rapidly and catastrophically. So I think that's a second category of evidence we can look at, is just the raw geological or paleontological evidence. But let's start with the first one. Somehow, if you were to go through the Bible and simply pick out one thread of evidence, one statistical line of evidence, which is this: how long did the patriarchs live? And as you know, in Genesis chapter 5 and 10 and many other chapters in the Bible, including chapters in the New Testament, which I find very interesting, we have a spread of authors spanning over hundreds of years, dozens of authors, and many ancient manuscripts that consistently say how long the patriarchs lived. So if you just take Genesis chapter 5, for example, it talks about the patriarchs like Adam and his son Seth, and all the way up to Noah, the 10 generations that are called the antediluvian or the pre-flood patriarchs. For some reason, the Bible records that those patriarchs who lived before the flood lived an average lifespan of 912 years. Now, when I was a teenager and I ran into that, I thought, my gosh, the Bible must be crazy. What are they thinking? People living 912 years when the average lifespan today is 70 some years? What's going on? Is it figurative? Is it myth? And I never knew the answer until I trusted in the authority of Scripture. And now God's allowed me to see even deeper with better X-ray vision into the statistical evidence that substantiates the claim, because something happens with those lifespans. After Noah's flood, which is about 1700 and some years into creation or after creation, the lifespans plummet systematically. They go from an average about 912 years to about 600 years and 400 years and 300 years, and the curve goes down exponentially in a statistically predictable pattern where the lifespans of these patriarchs between before the flood and then after the flood, if you plot them out and look particularly at 24 of them for whom we have reliable lifespans, they decline systematically along an exponential decay curve where 98% of their lifespans are predicted by the exponential power regression, which is statistical terms for a plot line that follows a mathematical regression curve where 98% of the data are explained by the statistical curve itself. It's unbelievable how people could think that some ancient sheep herders somehow colluded and got together and said, hey guys, let's create a manuscript written on the back of animal skins that's going to span hundreds of years, written by dozens of authors, that follows a statistical exponential decay curve where their lines of their lifespan follows along a 98% predictable line. It's impossible. So when we sit here and look at how in the world we have spanning over about 1,000 years, the different lifespans of these pre-flood and post-flood patriarchs that are recorded in the book of Genesis fall along this predicted decay curve, it's incredible. So you have to ask yourself the question, what in the world happened? Why did these people go from living an average of 900 years to 600 to 400 to 300 to 200 to 100 to an average of the high 70s that we have now on a worldwide basis? The answer is very simple, and there's only one real good plausible explanation. that Dr. John Sanford, an expert professor from Cornell University, who invented the gene gun. We're not talking about some some rogue creation scientist that people would like to box us in someday. No, we're talking about a leading statistical geneticist of his field from Cornell University has established. It's all from genetic bottleneck that came from the flood. If you take all of humanity and the thousands of people who were living before the flood and take just 8 of them and put them on a boat that lasts for a year, 371 days of Noah's flood, they get out and then they start having kids, and those kids start having kids and start having kids. All of a sudden you have a genetic bottleneck that's going to exponentially increase mutations in our gene pool, that it's going to systematically decline and decrease our lifespans. And it is unbelievable how well these data points fall along this line. It's almost like you could just say that proof alone can give credibility to Noah's flood. Because, look, no matter what people's background is or how they believe the Bible or not, every reasonable person would track with me to say ancient sheep herders writing on the backs of animal skins could not have dreamed this stuff up. It's now, maybe if they could say, if someone could convince me, well, Dan, it wasn't multiple authors and multiple languages that collectively wrote this. It was one guy, 2,500 years ago that sat down and penned the whole Bible, and he was an advanced mathematician who knew how to create an exponential power curve. And maybe then I would believe it's a false story. But that's not the case. We have a Bible that was written by people who were not advanced mathematicians, who somehow recorded an exponential decay curve that, for me, when you really look at it, doesn't only prove Noah's flood and the documents that we got through the flood, through either written or oral traditions. It also proves that people were living a long time back in the past, because there was limited people who came from a once perfect gene pool that was exponentially hammered by the bottleneck that came through the flood. So if I can just take maybe a minute and explain the second category of evidence that convinced me, let's go there. I was standing once in a dinosaur bone bed in Hilda, Canada, where there's a 14-mile span of not hundreds, not thousands, but tens of thousands of dead ceratopsian dinosaurs that are buried in mud hoodoos, these big mud mountains. They're buried under 50 to 100 feet of mud in an area, an expanse as far as the eye can see, and they're buried sandwiched with mammals and birds and fish and clams and dozens of other species of dinosaurs catastrophically buried in megatons of mud. And the explanation that the evolutionists will say over these ceratopsian bone beds is, well, there was a stream that turned into a river, and there was a tropical rainstorm, and all these dinosaurs tried booking it to escape and started swimming across this expanded river that had overflowed its banks, and they all just died and then got buried over millions of years. Hooey. There's no way that could have happened. It was a catastrophic worldwide event, because you're just standing there looking at these huge hills with these tens of thousands of dead dinosaurs are buried with fish and clams. And you have to honestly ask yourself the question, how much higher would the ocean levels have to have been to leave these dinosaurs buried in the silt deposits that they're found in? And that's just one area. If you go a little bit south from that to Montana, well, look at that. It's the same thing, hundreds of miles. And in fact, it's not just there. There's the Morrison Formation, which covers 13 states and 3 countries. So in the middle of America, you have this huge oval-shaped bone bed, and the southern tip of Canada and the northern tip of Mexico that are all filled with hundreds of thousands of dead dinosaurs buried with fish. How do you do that? It has to be a worldwide catastrophe.